Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, California Weather Watch. Today is January 19th, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see the storm track all the way up towards Alaska. Ridge of high pressure continues to dominate the weather for the west coast of North America. And we will be taking a look at the extended forecast and on in through the end of this week, as we're going to have some offshore winds coming. But some of the models are teasing at a bit of precipitation, trying to organize and get back into California. We'll take a look at the latest on that as we go through the video this morning. But the big weather maker is, again, another very strong wind event here for Southern California. Some strong offshore winds. We've got good upper level support, some very cold air banking up against the mountains of Southern California. And we're just kind of hoping that the mountain wave activity with this event is not even close to as severe as the last one, but it does look like a very strong event. We'll go over some of that in detail here in a moment. And you can see there is some lower level moisture, of course, the marine layer into Southern California. Enjoy this because this is all going to be swept away as we go through the day tomorrow. Very dry air incoming. You can also see that marine layer kind of hit and miss up the coastline through the Bay Area in Northern California. There's Mount Shasta right there, if you're wondering, the Sierra Nevada, nice snow-capped mountains, and there's some lower clouds into some of the valley areas, but it's not much. You can see the vast majority of the valley areas are fairly clear, and you can see some mid-level clouds moving across portions of Nevada. Now, I'm hearing a lot of chatter about how this is a La Nina year and this is just kind of how it goes across Southern California. It's just simply not the case. It is a remarkably dry, rainy season, even for La Nina. La Nina years can be drier than normal, but this one has been exceptionally dry, the driest ever recorded in some areas. And we're almost halfway through the wet season here when we average about 11.6 inches of rainfall. It's about 82% of Los Angeles's yearly rain of 14.25. And yeah, I'll show you that here right now. You can see Los Angeles International, UCLA, Van Nuys, Woodland Hills, Lancaster, Camarillo, the driest ever since October 1st. This is not usual. This is the percentage of normal. I mean, Los Angeles International Airport at 1% of normal. That's not typical. Even in a La Nina year, you're going to get 4 inches of rain usually by this time. So just kind of driving home that point and letting the facts speak for themselves. Now, also talking about some of the desert areas, this is going to be a crosswind out of the north. There's Desert Center. Look at Mountain Spring, 50, 55. There's Blythe, 45. Parker, 45. So heads up for that. Some difficult driving conditions, maybe some blowing dust at times as well. And you can see Laughlin potentially gusting 60 miles per hour. Again, this is a north wind, so that is a crosswind for some of the interstates across some of the desert areas. Now, Los Angeles, not mincing words, coming up here. Another high-end event coming in here. I have not seen them put out the particularly dangerous situation yet, but that doesn't mean too much. We're not going to get too caught up in that. There's a chance for very rapid and erratic fire spread and long-range spotting. Long-range spotting is when the embers get lofted into the atmosphere, then blown downstream with the very powerful winds, catching things on fire, potentially 1, 2, 3 miles downwind. So yeah, we got crazy stuff going on here. And you can see 80 miles per hour. In some areas across the higher terrain, you'll probably be pushing 100 miles per hour for some isolated locations. And this goes from 10 a.m. Monday through 10 p.m. Tuesday. And right now we're hoping that the mountain wave activity into some of the lower elevations is not too erratic and not too strong, hopefully not rivaling what was going on January 7th. But there still is the chance for some of that mountain wave activity coming off the higher terrain, getting into the San Gabriel Valley, for example. Now, looking at minimum relative humidity on Tuesday, this is actually lower than the previous 2 offshore wind events. Very dry conditions. I saw the raw data on the models was showing relative humidities down towards 1%. So yeah, very dry conditions coming in here, coupled with these very strong winds is why these red flag warnings are out. Let me clear my throat here for a second. Okay. Now, check this out. So this is a home weather station that I highly recommend. I get a lot of questions about this, so I like to bring it up on a daily basis. And you can see that there is a great smartphone app. It's got a great ultrasonic anemometer. It's all solar powered and wireless. I've had people who are not very good with electronics get this up and running in about 5 minutes. Very easy to set up. And I clicked on this station here. There's Burbank Airport right there. And I clicked on this station right there. And you can see, if you look at relative wind speeds, you see, it's almost 22 miles an hour there on January 7th. But then if you scroll since January 7th, you can kind of see it looks like it's in a wind sheltered location. So that kind of gives you an inkling on just how strong the winds were on January 7th. And you can scroll through the rest of the timeline there as well. Probably a very wind sheltered area, but yeah, the gusty winds with that major wind event we had on January 7th. Now, taking a look at precipitable water. So this is California right there. If we put this into motion, you can clearly see the very dry air that will be accompanying the shortwave, strong offshore winds, very low relative humidities. So that's what's kind of going on here on a larger scale. And this offshore wind event is probably going to continue on and through Wednesday and Thursday. It will be weakening as we go through the day Tuesday and on in through Wednesday, though. And then if we scroll out far enough, you can see that the European is teasing us a bit here, bringing a bit of moisture back into the state of Southern California, targeting Southern California at times with a little bit of measurable precipitation. So we're going to be watching that one very closely and kind of crossing our fingers and doing our rain dances and whatever you want to call it there for this event. But yeah, it's still a ways out. So we will be checking back daily. Now, looking at 10,000 feet, so just kind of showing you that we do have some pretty good support aloft with this system. So that's why we worry a little bit about some of this mountain wave activity, bringing some of those stronger gusts down into some of the populated areas. There's the European as of yesterday morning versus this morning. You can see that it is stronger with these upper level winds at 10,000 feet. A little bit of an uptrend over the last 24 hours. It did downtrend a little bit from what some of the models were showing last night. But again, we're looking at a pretty significant event if we look at the North American model versus the high resolution model, rapid refresh. You can again, looks like the HRRR is a little bit stronger. You can see some of these stronger winds across some of the peninsula and the transverse range, and it hangs on for a bit longer as we go on in towards Tuesday morning, for example, versus the North American model. But still, both of these scenarios would bring very strong winds here across the area. Also, kind of a contributing factor is watch how cold the air gets at 5,000 feet behind the mountains. So we're scrolling through here. We got the high resolution model on the right and the North American. Look at the cold air damming just bunch up against the mountains here. So what goes on here is this air is very cold. And of course, the density of this air, excuse me, I hope I'm not getting a cold here. The density of this air is very different from what is out over the coastal areas too. So this wants to plunge down. This is very dense cold air, so that could help keep some of that, or get some of that mountain wave activity down into the lower terrain there, especially with the upper level support and some of the sinking air aloft coming across the region. So yeah, that's what we're worried about there. Also, you can kind of see that cold air relax a bit here as we go on in through the day Tuesday, but it's still there, and we're still going to be kicking some of these offshore winds across the region. Now, looking at the North American model, if I scroll out here, you can see still a pretty strong wind event, but the HRRR is even stronger, especially across some of the higher terrains there. Yeah, so you can kind of see the differences there. Now, taking a look at a wider view of things, there's the Hawaiian Islands bottom left. There is the state of California. I'll put this into motion, and you can see the high pressure as it sinks down across the region. Yeah, you can see that big pressure gradient. It's going to build as we go through tonight and on in through tomorrow morning. Big dome of high pressure kind of centered right there across portions of Colorado and Utah. And again, yeah, that cold air feature is what brings these strong offshore winds. This air warms and dries out as it sinks and it moves down into some of the lower terrain, and it really gets bone dry by the time it gets to Southern California. Kind of the perfect setup in some of these scenarios for weather, for fire weather. Now, taking a look at that extended forecast run here. So this is the 12Z European hot off the presses. You see, we don't have much precipitation as we go through this week. We're dealing with some of these offshore winds, but then we get somewhat of a modified Arctic frontal system kind of trying to drop down here, and it wants to trigger a bit of precipitation. And you can see the system is fairly weak looking, but we'll take whatever we can get. At least some clouds would help things out. Maybe we won't have the offshore winds rolling and we'll have some of this precipitation falling. But again, I don't want to get into those details too much just yet, because Mother Nature's been showing a couple chances of some precipitation at time, and then it kind of quickly takes it away. So we're going to kind of wait on that. And plus, we have this to deal with. The GFS is on the right, the European Artificial Intelligence on the left. We're going to take a look at that same system. Do either model show it? Well, they kind of show a semblance of the beginning of it across the Pacific Northwest. The artificial intelligence does bring some precipitation. The GFS is much less willing to bring precipitation across California, but that's not a bad signal there on the European artificial intelligence. However, this is not, a big atmospheric river out of the southwest. This thing is lacking moisture even on the European artificial intelligence model run. And then we go out into the future, and still not much off in the long range as well. As we continue to scroll off here, you can kind of see some ridging hanging on here across the west coast of North America, keeping that southwest moist, warm flow away from the state of California for the most part. Now, if we look at 16-day precipitation anomaly, again, what we just looked at, this shouldn't be a surprise. That's the most recent GFS. Here's the 6 to 10-day precipitation below. There's 6 to 10-day temperature, kind of a below normal wide swath here, including much of the west, and 8 to 14-day mixed bag there as well. You notice they backed off with some of that above average across Southern California, and kind of a broad brush below here for the west coast. And total precipitation, again, kind of driving home that point. We've been exceptionally dry across Southern California since October 1st. Los Angeles usually gets close to 5 inches of rainfall, and you can see big swath here, less than half an inch. Many of these areas have not had any rainfall, and that some of these areas haven't had any rainfall going all the way back towards last spring. So anyway, yep, just wanted to get the word out. We have another wind event incoming. I may be live streaming as we go through the day tomorrow. I may be flying down tonight to go off and try to check out some of these wind speeds across some of the canyons and the higher terrain. So I will bring my anemometer set up and whatnot. I should have that ready to go tomorrow. Cross your fingers for that. And so I will be live streaming. So go ahead and check that out if you like. But anyway, we'll do this all again tomorrow. Well, we may not do it again tomorrow. We may be doing the live stream instead. So I may skip a day or two depending on how things go. But I will be live streaming at times if I come down. If I don't come down, I will be doing my normal briefings as scheduled. So anyway, hope you guys are having a good day. Click like and subscribe. We'll do this all again whenever I'll be available. And I will talk to you guys then.